Woohoo. I'm going to try to finish the chapter. Try. But that's a lot of verses for me to do. Bryce was shocked that all I've done is 4 verses. He's like, what? He's like, you've got to at least finish the chapter tonight, Bethany, come on. I'm like, okay. So the pressure is on. I'm going to do this so I can go home and say, I finished the chapter. But I don't know, we'll look at the time. All right. We're starting with verse 5, but I'll just start from the beginning. The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. Because of the fragrance of your good ointments, your name is ointment poured forth. Therefore the virgins love you. Draw me away. We will run after you. The king has brought me into his chambers. We will be glad and rejoice in you. We will remember your love more than wine. Rightly do they love you. I am dark but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Do not look upon me because I am dark, because the sun has tanned me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept. Tell me, O you whom I love, where you feed your flock, where you make it rest at noon, and why should I be as one who veils herself by the flocks of your companions? So that is the Shulamite doing most of the speaking there. And she begins, like I said last week, opening up with her meditations on her beloved, just bursting forth how wonderful he is, how she just loves him, and how she's sort of intoxicated with him. But then in verse 5, she sort of turns her thoughts from him to herself, which is, typical of us, typical of women. Back to me. I'm going to look back on herself, and it's what we do. So she looks at herself and she says, I'm dark but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. So she's dark, and the tents of Kedar, they were Bedouin people, and their tents were made of black goat skin. So she's likening herself to these black tents. So this is how dark she is. So she brings that analogy there, and she looks at herself and she says she's dark. Now, back then it would be better to be light, because that meant you were indoors all the time and you were, a lady of leisure, I guess. And so that would have been more beautiful. But she's dark, and she sees that, and she says in that, do not look upon me because I am dark. So she sees her faults. She sees her appearance as not being worthy. And she feels rejected too. She has this rejection from her mother's sons. They're angry with her. So she has this rejection. And she has this feeling of unworthiness, the insecurity and the inadequacies, which we can all relate to. There's a study came out, I think it was maybe in America, but it was probably this country too, that 95% of people feel insecure or inadequate, which is pretty much believable. My only question is, who are the 5%, that don't feel insecure? Who are these people? Because I can believe that. Sometimes we don't realize, do we? We think other people look like they have it together and you're the only one, but the truth of the matter is, none of us do. We're all pretty much feeling pretty insecure, pretty inadequate in some way or another. And I don't know who those 5% people are. I'm not sure if I've ever met one, because everybody I talk to feels the same. And so does this Shulamite. She sees her own appearance, and that it's not up to the standard of the day. She's not the typical cover girl, face. She's got flaws as well. These flaws are from the sun, but they're also from the work. They're from life. They're from just walking through life. These, flaws that she's got, these failures, these maybe marred by what the world, by just living, working and living. These flaws that she has, and all she can see is these. And she says, don't look upon me. She feels unworthy. And we feel that way so often. We have a picture of beauty, and a lot of our, thoughts of beauty is outward appearance, isn't it? But we have to look upon what God sees, and what God sees as beautiful. In Proverbs 31, verse 30, most of us know it, that charm is deceitful and beauty is passing. But it's the woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. And charm it is deceitful. It's passing, it fades away. It doesn't stay. We all know that. We get old, we get wrinkles, we get gray hairs, bags under our eyes, sagging. It passes, it fades. Today we can Botox and whatever. But eventually it does. It passes, it fades. And charm is deceitful too. We can look at beauty. But that's not all, is it? You see the models on the runway. Just because their outward appearance is, stunning, oftentimes their personalities, very spoiled, very arrogant, very proud. You hear the stories of them having patties just before they get on the runway. There's nothing beautiful about that. Nothing beautiful about, that kind of character coming forth. It's deceitful. It's not always what we think it to be. So beauty doesn't last. It's not always honest, but it's that fear of the Lord. That's where the praise is. It's the heart. We look outwardly, but we know that God looks upon the heart. And you think of Samuel, the story of David, when he went to anoint David. The previous king was Saul, wasn't he? He was handsome, he was taller than everybody, he was head and shoulders above everybody. He looked like a king. But when Samuel came to anoint the next king, that's probably what was in his head. He wants a good-looking king, somebody strong, tall, that's going to stand above everybody else because he's got to lead them, so he has to have that appearance, and that's what he's looking for. But God says to Samuel, I'm not looking as you are. I'm not looking on the outward. I'm looking on the heart. So as he goes through the brothers, none of them are it. It's the young David who was, young and rugged, and he was the shepherd. But he was the one with the character. It wasn't any of his brothers. It was him. He was out there as a shepherd, learning what it was to lead, learning to be the leader. And so God is looking at the heart. He looks at David's heart. Saul's heart, he wasn't a great king. He was very selfish, very arrogant. He wasn't the best of kings. But David had a heart after God. And it's that heart that God looks upon. It's not the outward. Our society does that. We fall in that trap. Society wants to hire somebody that looks the part, that looks like what the job is supposed to look like. And we fall in that trap too. We sometimes think we have to look a certain way. But God doesn't look at that. We don't have to look a certain way. It's the heart. It's the heart that God is looking at. So society, it's fallen. We're not going to change society. We can campaign, you can have that Dove Beauty and all of that and which is great, but it's a fallen world. We can't change society, but we can change our own hearts. We can change how we view ourselves before the Lord and how we view other people as well, our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ and, those around us. We can change our view of beauty and where beauty comes from, that it's that inward character that makes us beautiful. It's not the looks, it's not possessions, it isn't clothes, it's not your accomplishments or your families, it's Jesus. And I love the Psalms. Psalm 96 verse 9, it says, "Oh, worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness." And I love that. Worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. It's holiness that's beauty. Taking on his holiness, walking in him. That's the beauty. Worship him before him. The beauty is him. In Psalm 90, verse 17, he says, "And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish the work of our hands for us." Yes, establish the work of our hands. So he says, let the beauty of the Lord be upon us. His beauty, not our beauty, not our own achievements, not our own, makeup or hair or anything like that. The beauty of the Lord be upon us. And, David said, "One thing I desire, to dwell in his house and to gaze upon his beauty." He's the most beautiful thing. He's what we behold. We gaze upon that and we take his likeness for ourselves. We walk in his beauty, not in our own. It's that spiritual beauty that the Lord is looking at. We don't gain value from our appearances. We can't look upon our appearances being value and giving us credit or anything, nor do we gain our views from other people, how other people view us. That's not, the mother's sons were angry with her. They made her work and she was feeling rejected. We don't take our value from what other people think of us. either. It's what the Lord thinks of us. And as we go through the book of Song of Solomon, the beloved loved her. He thought she was wonderful. She was amazing. He's not bothered about what the mother's sons thought. He's not bothered at all. He doesn't even mention it. It's of no concern to him at all. He just loves her. She's got this, rejection and hang-ups of what people are thinking, and he doesn't care. That's not how he views her. He views her through his eyes, not through other people's. And so we go on. She says, do not look upon me. She's been a keeper of the vineyard. And she says, but my own vineyard I haven't kept. That's in reference to her own outward appearance. She's not able to take care of herself as much as she'd want to because she's working hard and looking after, other people. A little bit of a Cinderella story that she's got, but it also, I think, gives credit to her character, in as much as she's working. She's out there working in nature, in the fields. Yes, she's getting suntanned, which we all love. It'd be great, wouldn't it? It's the opposite. Nobody wants to be white today, look anemic. We all want a suntan, but back then you didn't want one. So here she is. But she goes on in verse 7, and she says, tell me, O you whom I love. And I think another version said, my soul loves. It's not just her eyes, it's not just her personality, her whole soul just loves him. She says, where you feed your flock, where you make it rest at noon. So now we have the introduction of the shepherd. And this is where the shepherd comes into it. And oftentimes, a leader was viewed as a shepherd. In ancient times, that they were to shepherd their people, as kings would be referred to as a shepherd. So here we have this bride acknowledging that he's a shepherd, that he's got flocks, and she desires to be with him. She desires that relationship with him. But there's also, with the whole idea of a shepherd, there's also that need for his care and his authority as well. It goes a lot deeper. I love this whole analogy of the shepherd, because as we know, the Lord is our shepherd. He is the good shepherd, isn't he? But you have that relationship, but you have that care, that nurture, and the authority, all wrapped up in this figure. Psalm 28, verse 8 and 9, he says, the Lord is their strength, and he is the saving refuge of his anointed. Save your people and bless your inheritance. Shepherd them also and bear them up forever. God's our shepherd. The Lord is our shepherd. And Jesus, in John 10, he likens himself to that good shepherd, which I'll just read because it's such a great passage. And I think it's needful just to look at Jesus being that shepherd. So you can turn to it if you like, but I'll start on verse 7. It says, truly I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason, the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have the authority to lay it down, and I have the authority to take it up again. This charge I received from my Father. So here he is. He proclaims himself the good shepherd. He's more than a hired hand, and I love that. He compares himself to more than just being hired. He's a shepherd, and the sheep are his, because most shepherds would not sacrifice their life for the sheep. If you got some sheep, a wolf came, you might try and defend it, but you're not going to make sure that you're not going to lay down your life for that sheep. You're not going to do that. A hired hand will leave the sheep, let them get destroyed. But Jesus is saying that he's not. He's different. He's better than that. He's going to lay down his life for the sheep. And he begins it saying he's the door. He's that doorway. And most of you, as you've studied being a shepherd, you probably know that in a sheepfold, there would be one door. And at night, then the shepherd would lay across that door just to stop any predators coming in and to keep the sheep in as well so that they don't escape. So he lays down in front of that door. When it says, I am the door, you have to pass through Jesus to get into the fold. And it's that picture. So he says he's the door, into that salvation, into the fold. He's not hired. He lays down his life, but he gathers. Compared to the thief that comes in to steal, destroy, and to kill, and they scatter, Jesus wants to gather. He wants to gather all that are his together and gather them together instead of it scattering. He doesn't kill. The thief wants to kill, but he gives abundant life. He gives that life abundantly. And, abundant life, it's not, long life, but it's that contentment and that joy that we have in Jesus. That's abundant life. It's being content in him, not necessarily the long life. But I love the fact as well that he knows his own and he calls them by name. He knows each one and he knows them by name. Oftentimes, in the Highlands that I heard up in Scotland, the shepherds would give names to each of the sheep, and I guess they know their name too. If you teach a sheep its name, it'll know its name, and each individual sheep will come to its name if you train them that way. So it fits with what Jesus says, that he knows our name, just as a shepherd who has that relationship with his sheep, each one numbered. This is not just a flock that, it's just all together, a bunch of flock, there they all are. He knows each one individually, and each one is precious to him too. And then we know his voice. And I love that idea that the sheep know his voice. There was a story of a Scottish man who went to Israel, and he changed clothes with a shepherd in Jerusalem and tried to gather the sheep together, but they wouldn't. And they would only go to the shepherd because the sheep follow the voice, not the clothes. The sheep did not recognize the clothes, but it was the voice. And so even though he had different clothes on, they went to the right shepherd. And knowing his name and hearing his voice, we follow his voice. Back in World War I guess some soldiers came to steal some sheep from a shepherd. And they managed to get them in the night and to start taking them away. When the shepherd woke up, he chased after them, but realized that he couldn't, battle the soldiers and gain the sheep back. There's no way he could fight. All he could do was call out and call them to come back. And that's exactly what they did. They all turned around, hearing his voice. They turned around and all came back to the shepherd. And that was his power. And the soldiers couldn't do anything. They had no power over the sheep because they recognized the voice of the shepherd. And how precious that is, that we recognize the voice of Jesus, that we know his voice, that we know his calling, so that we don't get led astray, by the other voices that are going to come in. But we know his voice by listening. It's just listening, day in and day out, hearing his word and hearing his voice and learning to recognize when he's speaking, when others are speaking, or maybe when we're speaking as well, our own inner voices. It just takes time, takes that building of the relationship. But he leads as well. He's a shepherd, and he leads. He leads his people. He leads his sheep. And the bride lets him lead. In this passage, she wants to know where he's feeding the flock. She wants to know where he's going. She's allowing his leading. She's not saying, have you considered those pastures over there? Have you thought about them? I think they're a bit nicer. She's not, interfering in that. She wants to know where he is, and she trusts his leading, where he leads her. And it's a good picture, even of an earthly relationship, of a marriage, of being led, allowing to be led. But there's also being led by the Lord too. We struggle with that. We struggle being led. I do. I think it gets worse as you get older. I don't know if anybody can testify that. I found it easy as a child and as a teenager, but the older I get, I think the more stubborn I become. And this weekend, I drove down. Christo was driving, and I'm in the middle. I've got Bryce, and I'm witnessing Christo's driving, and the whole time I'm thinking, slow down, speed up, pass him, go in that lane. No, don't do that. Do this. Don't. And I think I passed a few comments like, do you want me to drive? can I drive? And then on the way back, I had Bryce. And so I'm like, oh no, slow down, don't do this, don't do that. I'm thinking, can I drive? So next time I'm going to go on the insurance. I'm like, can I just drive? Can I drive it? But I was never like that. I was all, usually I'm okay. But the older I get, the worse I become. Like, don't drive me. I want to drive myself. You're slowing down. You should be speeding up. Why are we not overtaking? But then Bryce is the worst when you get into a car park, and he did it with Chris there. He's like, if you're driving, he's got to tell you where to park. It's just every time. It's over there, there's one over there. If you go there, if you go around there, that one's closer. I purposely go in the opposite direction, and just to annoy him, I'm going to park it where I want to park this car. But that whole idea of leading, it's easier said than done, isn't it? We can read this like, oh, yes, lead me to your pastures. But, really, when you think about it sometimes day in, you think, oh, no, I kick, I fight, I do say, the pastures over there look better. I think that's nice, the Lord. I think if you took me over there, that would be better. And if we did this, that, I always like to put my opinion in there. But this Shulamite, she doesn't. She wants to follow him. She's happy for him to lead. And she loves him in that way as the leader. She trusts his guidance, too. She trusts that he knows best. And it's that trusting, isn't it? And there's freedom. There's freedom in Christ, that abundant life, the going in and out and finding pasture. There is that freedom. We're free. We're free just to gain that life, that pasture, that food, that nurture from the Lord. There's a freedom. There's a satisfaction and a contentment. We have everything that we have in him as we follow the shepherd, but we're also his possession, and we're his prized possession as well. And sometimes we might just think of a shepherd leading his flock, but back in ancient times, a flock would be your wealth. That would be a wealthy man, would have lots of flock, lots of cattle. You think of Abraham, he had, a lot of sheep, a lot of cattle, and rich people, that their wealth was seen in wool and, in the sheep. And so we're the Lord's wealth. We're his possession. We're his prized possession. He died for us and he lives for us. He intercedes for us in heaven. He welcomes us into heaven. His whole life is for us. We're his wealth. You're his prize. And yet we do, we'll be like the Shulamite. Don't look upon me. I'm a failure. I'm inadequate. No, we're his wealth. We're his prize. It's what he laid down his life for. If you don't want to lay down your life for somebody that's constantly beating himself up. Oh, I'm unworthy. Oh, I'm not. No. He laid down his life. Of course you're worthy. You're worthy for him to die for. And he is that shepherd that lays down his life and brings in the sheep to his fold. It's a treasure. It's his wealth. And he wants to bring people in. He wants to gather the sheep together. So verse 8, it's now the shepherd speaking, or the beloved. And he says, if you do not know, O fairest among women, follow in the footsteps of the flock and feed your little goats beside the shepherd's tent. He sees the bride as beautiful, fairest among women. She's the best. He doesn't care if she's tanned. He doesn't care if she's been working in the vineyard. He doesn't care about that. He sees her as the fairest. He's not looking or acknowledging these flaws in her, but he's just telling her to follow. Follow in the footsteps. Follow me. Follow where the shepherds are and feed your goats. And I love it, this picture, that as she dwells under the care of the shepherd, she also brings her young to him. She doesn't just come herself. She's bringing the little goats to him as well. She's got a flock that she's nurturing, that she's caring for, and she wants them under the care of the shepherd as well, under the best care, the best, pastures. So she's a carer too. She's a nurturer, and women are. We have children, or we have people in our care. We have people maybe in our work or in the church that's in our care and that we nurture and that we love and that we want to bring. And what best place to raise your children but, beside the tents of Jesus. In Jesus' pasture, this is where we want to raise our kids, but this is where we want to bring the weak and the young as well to Jesus. We want to lead them to Jesus. But we can't just lead them to Jesus if we're not there ourselves. She has to go. She has to take them. She has to be there, and she has to pitch her tent. She can't just point the way. She's got to go herself. Where she wants these people to be, she has to go. And as the bride of Christ, too, we're to bring the weak, the needy to Jesus. We're to be, a bride, a church that will sit at the feet of Jesus, that will be refreshed and nourished by Jesus, but that can take the poor and needy as well to him, and that we can nurture those as well. As we follow in the footsteps of Jesus, we have those others that we bring with us. As a church, we do it, and as individuals as well, as his bride. We have this caring, this nurturing, just picture that's going on. And I love that. I love shepherdesses. There's several of them in the Bible that care for the sheep. It's a beautiful picture of that caring, that nurturing, but leading as well, and learning to lead. As we follow the Lord, we then learn to lead as well. So he goes on, and he says, I've compared you, my love, to my filly among Pharaoh's chariots. Your cheeks are lovely with ornaments, your neck with chains of gold. So this filly, it's a young female horse. I got a little horse lesson from Bryce about this. Some versions say mare, but this one says filly. It's probably more like a filly, a young female horse. It's lively, young, sort of stylish. It gives this picture of this, young woman. But mares or fillies were not leading Pharaoh's chariots. It would be stallions. They would be the only ones chosen. And so, it's this picture that she's this beautiful young horse, but worthy to be amongst Pharaoh's stallions as well. She's worthy to be there with the stallions. Somebody also pointed out that it might be just this love relationship between the stallions and the filly, but I don't know, whatever. She's worthy of Pharaoh's chariots. And the daughters of Jerusalem, in my version, then says, we will make you ornaments of gold with studs of silver. So they want to, make her ornate. They want to give her these gifts, decorate her. But these are obviously not actual gifts. They're not physical gifts. They're just gifts of, I don't know what you call it, but they're not literal gifts that they're giving. Verse 12, and we'll just, how far we got? Okay, a few more. I think we get through it. Verse 12, he says, while the king is at his table, my spikenard sends forth its fragrance. A bundle of myrrh is my beloved to me that lies all night between my breasts. My beloved is to me a cluster of henna blooms in the vineyards of En-gedi. So here she's saying her spikenard sends forth a fragrance. She's fragrant. She also has a fragrance to her from being with her beloved. She is fragrant too. She has that fragrance. And she says that he's that bundle of myrrh that lies all night. And so even though he's not present, he's with her. His presence and his scent linger on. And they're still there. She can still smell him, even when he's not there all night long. And the idea of just this fragrance of him is still close to her. She loves him so much that in his absence, she still smells him. Verse 13. Is it? Yeah, a bundle of myrrh. No. 14, sorry. The cluster of henna blooms in En-gedi. So En-gedi was an oasis, in the wilderness. It's a very famous place. It's got water and life, and the rest of it's just barren all around. It's a beautiful place. So it's this picture of something beautiful and healthy in the middle of barrenness. And it's that picture of, although there might be barrenness around us, although there's society, maybe even partly a barrenness in our lives, when the Lord comes into it, he's that henna blossom. He's that healthy, fragrant, it's alive, it's blooming, the vineyards of En-gedi. It's this beautiful picture that with him, her beloved, he can make it bloom, he can make it alive and make it fruitful. And, little henna blooms would be yellow and white flowers that would grow. And it's actually, I think this particular henna is only found in En-gedi. And it's the henna that they paint their nails with and decorate the palms of their hands as well, the women. in those countries, and that's what they do. But an interesting thing with the henna blooms is it's translated in other places to be a ransom or a redemptive price, which I thought was interesting too, that he's our ransom. You know, it's this henna bloom, which is literally translated here as a henna bloom. I think that's what it means, but also in other ones, he's our ransom. And he's that price. He paid the price. And it's that gives life, isn't it? The fullness of life, the fact that he paid it. And so he goes on, the beloved says, "Behold, you are fair, my love. Behold, you are fair. You have dove's eyes." And so he's reassuring her that he loves her. She's fair. She's beautiful. He's enraptured with her. He thinks she's beautiful. He really does. He's not looking upon those faults. She's beautiful. She has dove's eyes. So I guess it's referring to a big dove that had big eyes. I'm not sure if I would want my eyes like into a bird. I've never looked into a dove's eyes, but I don't know. Maybe that was romantic back then, the romantic thing. But eyes are special, aren't they? You know, they are that sort of window into your soul almost. You know, eyes are just something so unique, and to gaze into somebody's eyes, it's not just the outward appearance, is it? You know, when you look at beauty, you often do look into their eyes. And there is something very significant. Sometimes you look into somebody's eyes and you can see, oftentimes maybe the pain that they're going through or the joy that they have. Our eyes can be expressive. So it's more than just a color or, you know, long lashes or whatever. But there's that emotion in eyes, and there's that beauty as well that can come from eyes. And so he's describing her eyes, which is romantic. I guess, taking out the dove's eyes, but I guess it was romantic. And she returns the compliment. She says, "Behold, you are handsome," or "you're beautiful" as well. That's sort of the masculine word for the word that he used for her. She says, "My beloved, yes, you're pleasant. Also, our bed is green," which can also be translated couch, and it's probably a couch, not a bed, that it's referring to. She says, "The beams of our house are cedar and our rafters of fir." So she's giving that compliment back. And in this relationship, you do see that beauty of a marriage, you know, that he's the leader, he's the provider, he's the protector. But she also respects him. She follows. She loves him back. He compliments her. She compliments him back. And, you know, I have to be honest, sometimes I don't think that men need compliments. You know, sometimes you think, oh, they're big and strong, they should be fine. But you know what they do? And the Shulamite gave him compliments. "You're beloved, you're handsome, you're this." And, you know, it's a two-way thing. As much as we like compliments, so do men. They like it back too. But I like this picture of their couch is green, the beams of their house are cedar, and the rafters of fir. You have this fruitful, growing picture of this relationship together. An earthly relationship, that their relationship is strong, like these beams of cedar. It's got this strength. But you have this picture of the bride of Christ as well. Our relationship with him, it needs to have that strong foundation, the strong pillars of the cedar, that strength in there that is fruitful, that is growing, that is nurtured with him, that is blooming. It's green, it's alive. It's not a dead relationship. This isn't just traditions. This isn't, a lot of religions can go through traditions. You just have to do this, do that. But this is alive, It blossoms, it blooms, and it's got that strength, and it's growing. And so you look at this love picture that all starts off where she's just enamored by him. She's thinking of him. She just wants him close. She kind of turns her eyes inward, sees her own failings, sees her own inadequacies, gets a little ashamed of herself. But then he comes in and he reassures her. He loves her, but he's calling her to follow him and to be near him. And that's where we're going to get our beauty from, our security. It's never going to be, in the things that we do, but it's going to be in him. Our security is always going to be in him. So as we focus on that relationship with him, on that strong foundation of growing in him, then we can grow together as well as the church, as the bride, as a whole, that picture, of the church building, being strong, having the foundations on Jesus, but each one of us coming to Jesus, finding that shepherd and finding where he pastures his sheep and having that relationship, and then taking others with us too, and that growth, that nurture that we have. So I did it. I finished it. Finished the chapter, and I can go home and say I did. So let's pray. Father, I thank you for your word, Lord. I thank you that you are that shepherd. Lord, that you laid down your life for your sheep. Lord, that we could come into a relationship with you, that we'll be in that fold. Lord, that you know each one of us by name. You know our hurts, you know our joy, you know our sufferings, Lord. You know our character, you know our failings. But Lord, you love us. You find us beautiful. And Lord, you desire to call us and to lead us, Lord. And Lord, I pray that we would listen to your voice, that we would learn to hear it. And Lord, that we can hear you say when you want us to turn to the left or to the right, Lord. And Lord, that we would not get led astray by other voices, by our own desires, or by the world, or by the enemy, Lord. Lord, help us to recognize those voices and distinguish your voice, the Good Shepherd, Lord, and follow you. Lord, I pray that we would desire your pastures, yours where you are, not anybody else's, not the world's, not our own, but yours, Lord. May we pursue you in that relationship with you, Lord, that we would be fragrant. Lord, that we would have your fragrance too, and your beauty too. Lord, we ask these things in your name. Amen.